that better?
Much better.
Excellent, wonderful. All right, well, thank you so much. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. I'm not sure if we have anyone the East Coast or from the United States joining or other time zones, but I wanna welcome you all to our data-driven recruitment webinar. My name is Lynette Estrada. Thank you, Viorella, for including me, for hosting me in this webinar today, this afternoon. Super excited to be here. And the topic is basically data-driven recruitment and how to use recruitment metrics and dashboards for business impact. Okay. Here are the agenda topics for today. Importance of data. And again, as Viorella mentioned, it's definitely a topic that I'm very, very passionate about this topic because it really has impacted not only my career, but the stakeholders and candidates and everyone that I actually have worked with for the past 20 plus years in recruiting. I also like to hear from you. What is it really important for you and the why you're attending this seminar webinar today? I also would like to walk you through the evolution of TA dashboards because we actually I think we're going through a transformation today. So I'd like to provide you with my point of view on this transformation. I'd also like to walk you through, let's think big. I have oftentimes I have people that have approached me asking me, Lynette, where do I start, right? I want to build a dashboard. I want to provide data, but I just don't know how to start. So I'll provide you with my point of view on different approaches that you could use when you are building dashboards. Different challenges that we also face when we are creating dashboards. And then lastly, levels of communication. This is very applicable to talent acquisition. This is something that I actually created myself when I was a recruiter many years ago, and something that I have actually used over time. Just a little bit about myself. I started my recruitment career in the mid-90s as a college recruiting coordinator in the Washington, D.C. metro area for a nonprofit. At the time, I actually graduated with an MPA in business public administration, but I started doing college recruitment at the time, and I decided that was something that I wanted to do long term. I spent close to 10 years at Microsoft recruiting for sales, for marketing, and for core technical roles. So yes, I was actually a core tech recruiter back in the days for US, and I also recruited for other international locations, primarily in EMEA and in South America. When I was at Microsoft, I learned very quickly the importance of having a strong interview methodology to attract top talent. So those 10 years, I would say that those 10 years really helped me and formed the recruiting professional that I am today. And at the time, even though we didn't have sophisticated methodologies for data, on how to capture data, I also learned very quickly the importance of using data to impact the hiring efforts at the time. After Microsoft, I went to VMware. I spent most of my time leading and managing recruiting organizations. I joined VMware when we were at 4,000 employees. I left the company at almost 20,000 employees. So we had to learn very quickly how to scale, grow organizations fairly fast, and measure ROI and optimize processes. I also discovered that I really wanted to lead and coach global teams versus US only teams. That was really a great experience from a management perspective. I joined Nutanix after they went public in September of 2016. I spent almost 3 years there, and I learned a lot of things about the startup world. I also acquired the TA operations team. We created a TA operations team. We also started an employer branding team and grew my org from 30 to 100 employees in 15 countries. I just joined UiPath 4 months ago. Very, very excited to be here. And oftentimes people ask me, why did you join UiPath? And my answer typically, I will say culture. The mission is very mission driven. People and the technology for sure. And I remember when I interviewed with my CEO, and he kept talking about the why, how Bill Gates envisioned a world with a PC for every desktop. And he kept talking about how UiPath envisions a world with a robot for every person. And having gone through that journey myself at Microsoft, I got fairly excited. And I think, again, I can't wait to take the company to a whole new level. On a personal level, I'm happily married. I've been married for over almost 25 years. I have two wonderful sons in college, and I really enjoy traveling the world, learning about cultures and outdoor activities. Okay. So, importance of data. Data, it's increasingly central to the not only talent acquisition, HR function, as shown in HR's bottom line. I've been talking actually quite often to colleagues within the industry, and I would say that it's top of mind for every colleague, industry leader in HR. And everyone is thinking about it, right? As they go through their budget and planning processes, it's all about increasing the budget and adding resources for talent analytics leaders. And this is because we rely on data, right? More than ever. And every decision that we make, whether it's acquiring, recruiting, attracting talent, the way that we support, the way that we develop talent. So this is why I believe that data, it's so important in everything that we do. It really helps us, right, when we build our business cases. Again, even when we're having conversations with hiring managers, and they're asking us why we haven't found that many candidates, and you provide a top of the funnel with the data, and it's really, really helpful to have that point of view with data and the way that you impact and managing your decisions with data. Now, I'd like to hear from you, and again, I want to keep it open. We can actually use the Zoom chat, or we could also, if you want to provide your point of view via phone, that's fine as well. But in your view, what would an ideal dashboard do for you to best enable you to support your teams? For those of you that are currently using dashboards and using data in HR and recruitment.
I think you can unmute yourself and speak that way. I think it would be a bit more interactive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hello again. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Now I will tell you a little secret. Let's say I'm home with my children, putting the table with the phone and listening to the webinar. For myself, I do have some dashboards that I use, but I think they are not very accurate. They are, let's say, I do this kind of data analytics within our recruitment team, focused on our needs and what we forecast for. We forecast in point of new roles and so on for about 2 years now. And now I found myself that, okay, I really need more data, but working with Excel a lot.
It's painful, huh?
Yeah, it became quite painful. I mean, at the first, I was very proud of myself by learning new things, But now, yes, it became painful.
I can relate with you. Okay. Working on Excel spreadsheets can be very painful, especially if you have different people, right, working on the spreadsheet as well and changing the formatting.
Yes, this is the idea, and I try to do my best to be the first one, to have the initiative and say this is the best, so use this one. Don't change it.
Right.
Of course, any good idea is well embraced, but yes, the idea is to make our work easier. I know what UiPath stands for. I know what RPA is. We try to use it internally. We have these skills internally, and we try to develop them, you know, in our on our daily basis needs, starting from the recruitment process and so on. So
Got it.
the idea to become much friendly and easy to use.
Got it. Perfect. Okay, so friendly and easy to use, and of course, less painful for you.
Less painful, and of course, at the end, the best reports.
Got it. Okay. All right. Anybody else? Thank you for your view.
Yeah. So in my team, we've been building the people analytics function for like about 2 years, and we've been working in Excel a lot. So
Okay.
pain. But now, for a couple of months, we've started to use ClickView to get our dashboards out there. And for myself, our ideal dashboards would be the one that help the business, like our hiring managers, for example, better understand the context, both the internal and the external context of their market, of the market we're hiring from.
Got it. Okay. Excellent. Anybody else? Here, one more person.
For me, for example, it would be great if I would have a dashboard where I have all the details, okay, from diversity to where we are in the recruitment process with candidates. And then I can customize that each dashboard, mini dashboard, as I want. I can drag and drop that, so I can send it to different clients.
Okay, so more digitally focused and easy. The UI needs to be easy to interpret and to use.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, great input. Okay, so where we've been and where are we going, right? And this is something that I actually, when I was creating my slides yesterday, because again, I have worked for large cloud enterprise companies, I have worked for startups, right? So I've seen a few approaches and methodologies, but I will say that we're still, in 2019, I feel like a good amount of us are still responding to one-off requests for dashboards, right? So lots of dashboards, everyone is asking for dashboards because data is so important. So we keep building on prototypes and we're still responding to one-offs. The way that I look at dashboards, the way that they will evolve, we really need to understand common use cases and dashboard consolidation, right? So we really, instead of creating more dashboards, we need to start thinking about reducing the number of dashboards by refining common use cases. For example, if we've got, I lead a global TA organization, if I got my India team sending a weekly dashboard of open recs, right? The status of open recs. And then I have my EMEA team sending this very similar dashboard, but then I have the Americas team sending the very similar dashboards, right? And then I go into a QBR with my leaders and they're like, how are we doing? How many recs do we have open, statuses, all of that at a global level? Think about that. I need to go through 3 dashboards, right? With probably different data. But when you think about it, we have a the goal is the same. It's basically to capture open rec report with recruitment statuses. When are these recs are going to close? So the thought process is basically very similar. I just got to start consolidating more, right? And refining those common use cases. So that's basically the direction that we are heading towards too. And then I think the end result, we've got to make sure that we are creating more strategic and predictive dashboards. And how do you do that, right? Because you're probably asking, okay, Lynette, how do we get there? So you really need to make sure that you start with workforce planning. You need to identify critical business objectives. So you need to be in alignment with your CEO's strategic objectives. You need to be in alignment with your chief people officer, with your CPO or CHRO objectives, What are the core KPIs, the key performance indicators? And then you need to start creating alignment across department, right? So, for example, you are supporting sales. You need to understand what are the critical objectives, the critical roles, what are the talent gaps. Again, it's all about workforce planning. And then make sure that you are involved in the right stakeholders as well, right? You need to work closely with HRBPs because they will likely know what the attrition, people that will likely be placed on PIPs. You need to understand what your headcount numbers are going to look like. So that is the why you need to be in alignment with finance. And you need to be in alignment with the leaders because they're the ones that are actually planning for headcount tied to critical needs and location strategies as well. So again, it all starts with workforce planning and at the planning stage for each company, which is called the annual operating planning cycle. Okay. Now, before we start creating dashboards, we also need to understand our recruitment metrics, right? Because it's really important to understand what exactly you can learn from those. How long does it take to hire an employee, for example? How much money are you spending on the entire hiring process? And when I say how much money, you need to think about how many recruiters, what is my staffing recruiting capacity? How many agencies am I using? Am I actually adding sourcing channels? So all of that is cost per hire, and you need to be mindful of that. How efficient is your recruiting process? How long is it taking for you to hire someone, right? Is it taking 60 days? Why is it taking 90 days? All of that is really important for you before you start thinking about putting together a dashboard. How many candidates are applying to your job postings? How many candidates are applying internally to your job postings, right? So that is actually the job type. Which places are the candidates looking for your job postings? How well does your new employee perform at the job? And that is quality of hiring. And that for that specific metric, you're gonna have to think about interview panel, interview feedback, performance for this person. You're gonna have to work closely with your HRBPs as well. And that's how you put together quality of hiring metrics. And then job descriptions, they need to be listed properly as well. So that's something that another thing that you could take a look into it. And where are you posting your jobs? And again, these are just basic recruiting metrics that you're gonna have to understand and think through it when you are putting together a recruitment dashboard. I typically have used these ones for quite a few years. They are actually, I love reading LinkedIn Talent blog. The LinkedIn Talent blog has actually some really good data on basic recruitment metrics. These are just one, the 12 that I typically like. Again, each company has different metrics, right, and different needs. But I think, again, cost per hire, right, employee referrals, you want to make sure that you're tracking employee referrals, because as a recruiter, employee referrals are great, but if you have an employee referral rate of 70%, that is high. And why is that high? Because it's impacting your diversity of thoughts and perspectives as well, right? You want to make sure that you are hiring people that are actually tied to your company's objectives from a skill sets perspective, diversity of thoughts and perspectives as well. Time to hire, again, if you posted a role and a role has been open for over 90 days, there are clearly some pressure points there, right? Then you're gonna have to take a look at the job description. Are we still in alignment with what we originally had agreed on? So again, recruitment metrics, you really need to understand the recruitment metrics fairly well before creating a strong dashboard for your company. Okay.
If we can go back to this slide, I'm curious to see which of these metrics are followed in other companies, and if there are other metrics that you would add to this list. So if we can get like 1 or 2 people from the attendees, that would be good.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can tell you that we've been tracking recruiters' productivity.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're looking at, okay, so how many requisitions does a recruiter have, and how fast they're filling them, and I saw in the slide like candidates per call and so on. So yeah, we're looking at recruiters' performance also.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the recruiters' productivity, and again, it's not, this is a screenshot that I got from LinkedIn Business Solutions, but recruiters' productivity is extremely key. We track it at UiPath. We actually, it's part of our OKRs and KPIs. We track it quarterly over quarter, right? It also helps us as leaders to understand the recruitment capacity, right? Typically, recruiters should handle between 15, 20 recs. They should be probably hitting for sales 15 hires a quarter, for non-sales technical roles more like 10 hires a quarter. So spot on. Recruiters productivity and quarter over quarter is extremely key. It helps with recruiting capacity and also have a view into the rec loads for sure.
I actually have a question on this slide, and maybe you'll talk about it later, but I'm really curious. You mentioned like cost per hire, and we've been trying to consolidate that recruitment cost for the past months, and I was wondering, what are you looking at when you consolidate the cost per hire?
Sure, and it varies from company to company, okay? So there's not a magic formula, right? Or set formula for cost per hire. Again, I have worked for 4 companies, and my previous 4 companies have really calculated very differently. For example, that my previous company included agency spend. They included the recruiter's salary, right?
Yep.
The recruiter's training, any training that was embedded to the recruiter's development. Some companies do not include agency spend at all. So it's really how I will talk to your FP&A finance team and also have their point of view, right? Because it also it ties back to how finance wants to report from an OPEX perspective, the cost per hire, and from a headcount perspective. So there's no right or wrong formula. But I think you definitely need to, it ties back to FP&A on how they are reporting headcount budget.
Awesome, thank you.
Sure. Any other questions on metrics? Okay, this is a fairly common one, top of the funnel. It is one of the metrics that I really love seeing, because it really gives managers, and this is more for hiring managers, right, a view into the recruiter's work for each rec. Sometimes managers, right, they could come to you and say, well, we haven't really found anybody, you haven't screened anybody, and then you provide them with the top of the funnel and their eyes open up. And it's a beautiful moment, right? When you're like, yeah, we have been talking to quite a few candidates, maybe 300. We have put 22 through the process. We have put 5 through the interviews. We made a hire, or we haven't made any hires. And that's basically the aha moment for managers and for recruiters, because oftentimes if they have not spent time having an intake call, right, at the beginning of the recruiting cycle, understanding really what they're looking for, that really impacts the time to fill or time to hire, by not understanding what the funnel looks like or what the requirements look like. Okay. So now that you understand your recruitment metrics, you will have a great partnership with your hiring manager. Typically, when you in order for you to create an effective dashboard, you really need to understand the audience and the why, right? The why is it that you need a dashboard. So really need to communicate and understand what is the information, what is it that you're trying to accomplish, the problem that you're trying to solve for. And we all know that by having that clear communication and understanding, a very strong dashboard will help us, right, make informed decisions making. It also helps us having great data-driven conversations and your business makes faster decisions based on a single source of truth. Now, a great dashboard's message and metrics are clear. The color, right? Again, it needs to deliver the most relevant information to your audience. And I would probably say that it really comes down to three things: thoughtful planning, informed design, and a critical eye for refining your dashboard. Again, you need to know your audience fairly well. The best dashboards are built with their intended audience in mind. You know, for example, you know, this doesn't happen by accident, right? Right now, if I'm working with my CFO, the CFO says, hey, Lynette, we're done with our headcount planning. We are done. We're ready for FY20. Headcount has been approved. We got approved this many heads. Let's go. So immediately I'm going to say to my CFO, okay, that's great. So we need to make sure that everyone is in alignment, that we are hitting our targets quarter over quarter, right, against that headcount plan that has been approved. And I'm going to ask him, what is it that you want to see in that dashboard? Do you want to see hires? How many starts do we have each quarter? Do you want to see transfers in, transfer out? What is it that you want to see in this dashboard? Again, getting the input from the audience, right, from the stakeholder is going to be really key. You don't want to just go randomly and start creating dashboards that are not really relevant without knowing your audience. If it's for a chief revenue officer, if it's for a salesperson that quite frankly will probably have 15 seconds, then you have to tailor it to your audience, okay? So make sure that you understand that, because a beginner might need more action-oriented labeling for filters, or more colors, or something that is more relevant to that person who's never seen a dashboard before. And remember that you can always create more dashboards, right? Make sure that you consolidate as much as you can. And from my point of view, think big. You can absolutely think big, but start small. The best approach is to start simple. Any questions on this one?
I have a question. You've mentioned like the relationship with the HR business partner and building the dashboards with themselves. And I was wondering if in your experience, well, here in Romania, maybe Vio told you a bit about this, we're not actually that data driven yet. And I was wondering, how can you help business partners understand the importance of data when they're not data driven?
I would say that you start by providing a view on recruitment metrics, right? How recruitment metrics help us make informed hiring decisions and help us drive impact. Again, just by setting a quick call with them or meeting with them and walking them through the top of the funnel, basic metrics. I think is really key. I think it's really key for them to understand that we don't want to be reactive, we want to be proactive. And also you've got to let them know we are business partners, right? And that you need to work together. When it comes to workforce planning, this is just not a TA or HR initiative. This is a company-wide initiative, and everyone needs to be involved, right? Mm-hmm. So I would say this is part of workforce planning. You need to identify critical needs, right? And you need to recruit for those critical needs, and that's basically mainly TA. But when it comes to identify the critical gaps, internal talent gaps, that work needs to be done in partnership with HRBPs. Everything that is talent, right? The talent strategy for the company, it's got to be a combination between, actually, I would probably take it a step further. It's actually HRBPs, your talent team, talent development or learning and development. You also need to incorporate finance into the conversation and the stakeholders. I would say those four. And again, you're gonna have to be proactive. Set up a meeting with them, and if you feel that they still don't get it, then set up a meeting with the four stakeholders that I just mentioned. And it's amazing when the outcomes, right? Because everyone is so passionate about talent. hiring the best, attracting them and developing them, that then the light bulb goes on and it goes on, and they're like, wow, it makes sense, right, to have a this partnership and cadence.
Okay, I have another question. Sorry, I'm on another slide, the slide with the funnel. The first layer was employer branding and awareness, and I was wondering if right now you're measuring in any way that first layer.
We are, and I'm gonna pass this over to Viorella because she's the subject matter expert on this one. I just put it in there.
Yeah, so we're measuring that. We had more, we did it more successfully last year when we had a different ATS, because we've managed to track everything from the number of views that was needed, the number of times a person needed to see an ad so that they went and applied to our career site without actually clicking on apply from an ad. So we had everything quite granular. This year we only have data from the channels that we use, but we did some magic and we're gonna have granular data again starting with January. But what we measure is everything from impressions, clicks, and everything that you can see in the actual channel. And also we look in the ATS at the number of hires, at the success rate of the applicants, so number of applies that are converted into hires, so that we know more of which channels are really relevant to what we need, which channels work, and in which regions, because there are many differences.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Great question. Okay, so now that you understand the why data is important, we understand recruitment metrics, and of course, I mean, we need to start by understanding the why and the audience. I actually have identified 4 core areas to measure when I typically create my own dashboards. Again, hires to plan, right? How are we doing relative to plan? And bottom line is, especially at the C-suite level, hiring managers, stakeholders, right? Business leaders, they want to know how are we doing relatively to plan. And if we need to hire 100 people and we are only at 50% of plan, that's definitely could be an issue. Productivity pipeline, understand where we are with each rec from a pipelining perspective, right? And then measuring the recruiter's productivity. This actually ties back to the earlier question around recruiting capacity and recruiting productivity. That is, the audience would be more TA, business leaders, HRBPs. Workforce planning, like I mentioned, expected hires current quarter and future based on where current recs are at in the process. Numbers of recruiters from a capacity perspective. And I will, in the next slide, I will provide you a quick view on the different metrics that are tied to workforce planning. Descriptive on hires. Where are we getting talent from, and where are we losing talent to? So company, the source of hire is really important, typically for business leaders, right? If we definitely, I would encourage you to start tracking internal mobility if you haven't tracked it yet. It's really important as company grows and as company scale, we start thinking about internal transfers. We want to track that, right? Because we also want to make sure that we understand from a career development perspective, how are we developing our employees and if they are moving within the org to different roles. And then early career, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, you mentioned internal transfers, and I was wondering if you are also tracking promotions or just organizational transfers, like I move from a team to another team.
Yeah, we also track promotions. That could be tracked in your HRIS. We use Workday. as an HR.
Okay.
So Workday has a module for track promotions. So you can configure that capability and pull and track it via Workday.
Okay, got it.
Yep. Early career is another big one. I'm a huge fan of early career, primarily because I started my career as a college recruiting coordinator, and I know I've got a lot of passion for college recruiting. I think they are hiring early career. These individuals really shape, right, your future workforce. So tracking early career, and again, it depends if you have structure a UR, University Relations program or intern program in place, ties back into setting up the fields properly in your applicant tracking system and start tracking them, right? If you are attracting an early career, the definition could vary among companies. Typically 1 to 2 years of experience is what I've seen. But again, I think it's also really critical to start tracking early career in your dashboards. Workforce planning, now I'm not going to go through this one. I'm going to go through this one real quick, but again, workforce planning is crucial for companies. You could actually, in most HRIS, again, Workday has a module we have already in our company. It's being configured. So you can actually, we can actually start, we're going to start tracking the percentage of critical roles identified for next fiscal year, percentage of employees with up-to-date skill sets. You can even track or enter LinkedIn profiles, percentage of top talent. That ties back to your performance management capabilities and approaches, right? If you're, I don't know, if you're using 9box, whatever calibration approach or tool that you're using, retention rates, and you can also start, we're going to start tracking the percentage of managers that are going through effective interview training methodologies, because I think it's also really critical to understand and make sure that we understand how many managers or interviewers are being trained on effective interview methodologies as well. Challenges we face evolving dashboards. We all know that the data in a system of record, it needs to be complete, consistent, accurate, valid. Ties back to the first person who asked about using spreadsheets, and I said it's painful because, trust me, I have experienced this quite often in my career. It's all about the data, right? You always need to check for data integrity in your ATS or HR systems. And the bottom line is your report is only as good as your data that was inputted. Basically boils down to that, right? You can create a very, very sophisticated prototype or dashboard, whether you're using Tableau or any other platforms, but if the data is not good, really, it means nothing to leaders and stakeholders. So it is very key for you, if you're a leader, to work with your recruiters, with your recruiting organization, to make sure that the data is clean, right? Consistent processes and data capture across departments. Again, and make sure that you work closely with finance. They can help you a lot because they also want to make sure that the data is accurate from a finance, headcount, budget planning perspective. We're all in this together. So I would encourage you to don't work in silos, start partnering closely with other relevant corporate functions. And then the challenges also are around finance plan numbers, right? Sometimes you have team members from finance working on Google Docs, Excel spreadsheets, and then they come to you and you're like, well, no, these are the numbers that the hiring manager gave me, so I need to hire 10 people. Finance comes back and they tell you, no, you need to hire 5. That's basically what we budgeted in the plan. So I think I've been very repetitive around the alignment between finance and HR and TA. It's very critical in order for you to create a prototype or a dashboard that makes sense and is accurate. So this is something that I created a few years ago, many years ago actually. I call it the levels of communication. This is very talent acquisition related. So to me, I actually think when I think about communicating with stakeholders, I think about 3 levels. The first one is a transparency report. That's basically when you open a rec, you have your intake call, and you provide your manager every week a report on statuses, right? How are you doing against that rec? The level 2 is the monthly dashboard. This is a summary report of key metrics. How many open recs do we have? Time to fill. What is the average candidate life cycle? This is time to fill, time to hire, the source of hire. This one is more monthly, and this is basically the meeting that you can set up with all the stakeholders involved: finance, staffing leaders, HRBPs, SVP, VP level, business leaders. And then the last one is basically your recruiting engine, and this is the executive dashboard. This is could be a quarterly overview that you can provide during your QBRs, quarterly business reviews with your stakeholders, primarily with your C-suite. Also, you can enhance it, and it's something that you could provide to your CEO or the board of directors. Again, it's a more sophisticated dashboard. Oops. The first one, again, transparency reports, very basic, right? Numbers of days open, and you can include in this one the top of the funnel. You can also pull a simple spreadsheet. I always like to provide a quick view in an email to recap the week's activities. Again, you could attach your top of the funnel, or you could attach your report in Excel. But it's always nice to have a quick email, a summary, week over week, from the recruiter to the hiring manager on activity. Level 2, monthly dashboard. This one is more sophisticated. You have more stakeholders. Usually, you could actually do this in Tableau, right? You could integrate spreadsheets or information from your applicant tracking system into Tableau, and basically create a more sophisticated view for your stakeholders. Okay. This one, anyway.
Sorry, I was wondering, are you tracking like any external data? It takes me like 50 days to hire a developer. And if I go to the hiring manager and I don't provide like the external context, like, well, in general, it takes you X days to fill a role, they might say maybe there's a problem with us, and we're looking at how we're doing recruitment or our recruitment processes. So I was wondering if you've ever like tracked external data. Yep.
When you say external data, market data from other
market data, yeah, market data, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. You could track. You could come to your manager and say, okay, so in Romania, we use LinkedIn Insights, so it's called talent mapping. I think it's always really great to have your market data and talent mapping and talent availability, talent pools into the dashboard. Again, these are just examples, right? You can customize it in your own way. If you feel like you have to pull external market data and say in Romania, there are only 13,000 developers in these specific regions, and we have basically talked to everybody, right? Or basically you have talked to everybody. Then you can actually start a conversation, say, listen, right now we're going into day 60 because we are experiencing talent availability, right? The talent pools are just not there. What about, have you thought, and then you have to take your conversation forward. Have you thought about relocating people? Have you thought about opening up this rec in another location within EMEA, right? The EMEA region.
Yep.
So yeah, so I think it's a combination of your efforts internally, and then mapping and talent pools. And then, at some point, you also need to take a look at your holistic approach, right? You have actually exhausted your sourcing channels, you have exhausted the talent pools. Do we need to open it up for agencies, right? In the end, when it comes to feeling hard to fill recs, you have to take a look at you have to take a look at it holistically, right? And that is okay. I mean, you have to be okay with that. But yeah, absolutely, including external market data, absolutely, go for it.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay. Level 3, again, this is a very simple dashboard that I sometimes create for execs. And for me, at that level, you don't want to be sure. You can provide the monthly dashboard to them as well, so that they have a more granular view into your recruitment activities. But at that level, when you go to the C-suite, they just want to see 5 things, right? And this is just the talent acquisition category, but usually when you go to board of director meetings or C-suite meetings, they want to see people ops dashboard. So this would be just a component of the people ops dashboard. And typically they want to see engagement and they want to see attrition numbers. So that is why I kept it very simple, because at that level, you just want to go in with an 8 people ops dashboard, and this TA dashboard would be a component of the overall people ops dashboard. Typically, they want to see percentage of to goal. How are we doing company-wide? Source of hire, they want to see how long recs are taking. Candidate experience is a big one also, and gender diversity these days is very big, especially in our software cloud industry. Okay. Urela, I'm right on time, 12:59. So
I'm proud.
I think we have a few minutes, right? Maybe Urela, for a few questions.
Yeah.
Any questions?
I have one. So we're talking a lot about data, and as I already mentioned, my feeling is like the Romanian HR market is not completely like skilled in using data, or as you said, having accurate data, because, well, garbage in, garbage out. What are the skills that HRs in general need to build this type of inputs into the business?
Yeah, I would say you really need to understand Excel, right? That's just an example. We also, yeah, hardcore skills, analytics. I think business acumen, you really need to understand the businesses that you support. If you don't, and when I say that, make sure that, even for recruiters, right, make sure that you understand the business strategic priorities. You've got to be able to communicate in the language of the business, right? So if it's technical, try to learn the language of the business. Listen, skill sets like Excel, Tableau, dashboards, become certified is important as well. You also need to understand how to gather that sourcing intelligence from the different platforms that we typically use. We use LinkedIn Recruiter, we use LinkedIn Insight. Again, I'm not saying go back to school and get a math degree or a finance degree, but you really need to make sure that you understand how to read dashboards, what is, the data, getting, in alignment with finance, what is important for them, but also what is important for your stakeholders, right? Getting to know your audience. Again, that is number one. I think sometimes we just don't want to talk about it, or we just, we are very busy, right? And we can get very tactical and very busy, but I think you really need to start elevating yourself, move from just filling recs to influencing hiring decisions. And how do you do that? Of course, building strategic partnerships is okay, it's fine, but how do you get to influencing those decisions, right? How do you become that strategic, that SME? And how do you get the seat at the table? from my experience, for me personally, again, and I worked for Microsoft for 10 years, trust me, Microsoft was really good about, you've got to learn Excel and you have to understand how to put a PowerPoint deck, right? Basic things like that are really, really important for people, and are really important when you get to the C-suite, or when you get to just, you know, creating dashboards and inputting data. Now, if you're saying, Lynette, I don't even have a spreadsheet, right? Excel, and I don't even have that. Then you could start there. You can start with, you know, using just a simple Google Doc, right? Excel, where everyone can collaborate on it.
Yep.
And make sure that the fields are consistent.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
Great. Any other questions? Okay.
I think we can maybe answer 2 more questions from the registration form that we sent out.
Okay.
I selected one that is really interesting.
Okay.
They wondered, what strategy did you use to make sure everybody from TA people to hiring managers embrace a culture of around data?
Sure, absolutely. I'm very open about it. My team, probably the ones, if they have any team members here, they know that I talk about it so much that I know that I can be very pushy about it, but I am always talking about data, right? I'm always singing the same tune. And I think in a way that I don't want to stress people out, but I also want to make sure that people understand the why it is important, right? Having worked for organizations, one of my previous companies, when I joined the company, we had a spreadsheet and we had 3,000 roles open, right? It was chaotic. It was so chaotic that I didn't even know where to start. And I said to them, okay, so let's basically, and I kept pushing people. I'm like, well, why do you have 10 recs open in Canada? Are they really relevant, right? So pushing people to think more strategically, and instead of just opening up a rec for the sake of it, right? Be thoughtful about the why is it that you need that open rec, or is it critical or non-critical? So I typically start there. Of course, I also take a look into my applicant tracking system. That's number one. Also, I take a look at my applicant tracking system. What type of data are we tracking? Is the data, the system of record, accurate? And again, as a leader, I talk about it all the time, and I make it a priority for me and my function. So I also try to influence and bring the stakeholders, right, together and have the conversations. This is not just my job to become more data driven. This is actually something that is going to help all of us as we transform, as we take the company forward. So again, since I joined for example, UiPath, and my team knows I've been fairly close, working fairly closely with finance. And some people could argue, well, you should be working more with, the CMO or the CLO, which is true. I work with them, but to me, I really needed to understand our current state as a company from a talent acquisition perspective, priorities perspective. And I think that has been really helpful. So, and bringing recruiting and HRBPs and finance, all of them right into the conversation at the table. And let's talk through the problems that we are trying to solve for and the why we need this data, because we need to make sure that we are making informed decisions, and those informed decisions are going to impact greatly, right, the company as a whole. So I would say have a view into the systems that you have today. How are you tracking your data? And even if it's in a spreadsheet, right? If it's in a Google Doc spreadsheet, did you have the right fields? Are you capturing the right data? Get to know your audience. What is it that they are expecting from you? So have a point of view from the different stakeholders, from your HRBPs, from finance, from your recruiting organization, and you start there. And the more that you talk about it, people even get excited about it. They're like, oh, wow, you know, hiring 70% employee referrals is not good because guess what? We've hired mostly males, right, in this function because everyone has hired people that look the same. And then when we start taking a deep dive into why, wow, what can we do differently, right? It's all data driven. So we all know the benefit of it. Keep talking about it, keep having, again, I know that all of us are thinking big. You need to start small, and but you need to have the conversation and make it a priority for you and your team. That was a long-winded answer, Viorella, but
yeah, but I liked it. Are there any other questions?
great.
Good. Then I think we're good for now. Thank you, Lynette, for this. I hope the information was useful to all of you that attended this webinar today. We will share the recording with you, and we will also add it to the HR Hub group on Facebook, so we can continue the conversation. But this was really good, really great.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. And, I look forward to future webinars, and hopefully when I get to Bucharest again, I look forward to seeing you all.
Yeah, we can do something live as well.
Absolutely. Thanks all.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.